All bourbon is a whiskey, not all whiskey is a bourbon. That makes sense, right? Hey, on this channel, that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about all things whiskey, from we have American single malts to Finnish whiskey to wheated whiskey to different recipes, more than 10 if you know what I mean, and also some single barrels. Very fortunate to go all around the country to visit distilleries, to pick barrels, to explore these facilities, meet with master distillers, brand ambassadors, and we're going to take a look behind the scenes. That's really what I want this all to be about. Also, hopefully to learn something about whiskey, make whiskey more approachable. Sometimes whiskey could be a little, uptight. Hey, it's American spirit. Let's have fun with it. Doesn't need to be pretentious. That's what this channel is all about. We're gonna make cocktails. We're gonna talk about cigars. We're gonna talk about barbecue. Why not? These are all great things that I like to enjoy, and I'm gonna hopefully come across with some content, because who doesn't like those kinds of things, right? We're gonna talk about tasting whiskey, how to nose it, how to drink it, how to actually come up with tasty notes, and we're gonna do some reviews. I get packages sent all the time. This one right here is a Heaven Hill 19-year-old Kentucky straight wheat whiskey. That'll be a special video on its own. Before we get any further, we want to talk about the 5 rules, requirements to make bourbon. So in 1964, there were some rules put in place to keep up with the quality of bourbon, and those rules are still in existence today. Rule number 1, it has to be produced in the United States of America. It doesn't have to be made in Kentucky. Rule number 2, has to be made with at least 51% corn. Yeah, there's some bottles here that have a higher percentage of corn or less percentage of corn, but those aren't bourbons. Those are whiskeys. You following along? And yeah, there's some great whiskey that has a high percent of corn, but it's not a bourbon. It is a whiskey. It's a rye. There's so much that we're going to touch on there. It has to be aged in new charred containers. 99% of the time, it's going to be a bourbon barrel or a barrel, a new American oak. But there's other containers out there that also qualify for that. Rule number 4, it cannot be distilled more than 160 proof. Personally, I don't want anything that's over 160 proof. Also, for the entry proof of that container, it cannot be more than 125 proof. So we're distilling less than 160 proof, and it has to enter the barrel or container at 125, but no higher. It could be lower. And yes, it cannot be bottled less than 80 proof. And while yeah, bourbon doesn't legally have to be made in Kentucky, the majority of bourbon, yeah, is made in Kentucky. And fun fact, if you didn't know, there are more barrels of bourbon in Kentucky than there are people. That's a lot of bourbon. Like and subscribe, and let's go on this little bourbon journey together. Cheers.